Wordless 23. Inchoate. Recently begun, rudimentary, elementary. Before the creation, the world was an inchoate mass. Incidence. Rate of occurrence, particular occurrence. Health professionals expressed great concern over the high incidence of infant mortality in major urban areas. Incidental. Not essential, minor. The scholarship covered his major expenses at college and some of his incidental expenses as well. Incipient. Beginning, in an early stage. I will go to sleep early for I want to break an incipient cold. Incisive. Cutting, sharp. His incisive remarks made us see the fallacy in our plans. Incite. Arouse to action, goad, motivate, induce to exist. In a fiery speech, Mario incited his fellow students to go out on strike to protest the university's anti-affirmative action stand. Inclement. Stormy, unkind. In inclement weather, I like to curl up on the sofa with a good book and listen to the storm blowing outside. Incline. Slope, slant. The architect recommended that the nursing home's ramp be rebuilt because its incline was too steep for wheelchairs. Inclined. Tending or leaning toward, bent. Though I am inclined to be skeptical, the witness's manner inclines me to believe his story. Inclusive. Tending to include all. The comedian turned down the invitation to join the Players Club, saying any club that would let him in was too inclusive for him. Incoherent. Unintelligible, muddled, illogical. The excited fan blushed and stammered, her words becoming almost incoherent in the thrill of meeting her favorite rock star face to face. Incompatible. Inharmonious. The married couple argued incessantly and finally decided to separate because they were incompatible. Incongruous. Not fitting, absurd. Dave saw nothing incongruous about wearing sneakers with his tuxedo. He couldn't understand why his date took one look at him and started to laugh. Inconsequential. Insignificant, unimportant. Brushing off Ollie's apologies for having broken the wine glass, Tamara said, "Don't worry about it, it's inconsequential." Inconsistency. State of being self-contradictory, lack of uniformity or steadiness. How are lawyers different from agricultural inspectors? While lawyers check inconsistencies in witnesses' statements, agricultural inspectors check inconsistencies in grade eggs. Incontinent. Lacking self-restraint, licentious. His incontinent behavior off stage so shocked many people that they refused to attend the plays and movies in which he appeared. Incontrovertible. Indisputable, not open to question. Unless you find the evidence against my client absolutely incontrovertible, you must declare her not guilty of this charge. Incorporate. Introduce something into a larger whole, combine, unite. Breaking with precedent, President Truman ordered the military to incorporate blacks into every branch of the armed services. Incorporeal. Lacking a material body, insubstantial. While Casper the friendly ghost is an incorporeal being, nevertheless he and his fellow ghosts make quite an impact on the physical world. Incorrigible. Not correctable. Though Widow Douglas hoped to reform Huck, Miss Watson called him incorrigible and said he would come to no good end. Incredulous. Withholding belief, skeptical. When Jack claimed he hadn't eaten the jelly donut, Jill took an incredulous look at his smeared face and laughed. Increment. Increase. The new contract calls for a % increment in salary for each employee for the next 2 years. Incriminate. Accuse. The evidence gathered against the racketeers incriminates some high public officials as well. Incrustation. Hard coating or crust. In dry dock, we scraped off the incrustation of dirt and barnacles that covered the hull of the ship. Incubate. Hatch, scheme. Inasmuch as our supply of electricity is cut off, we shall have to rely on the hens to incubate these eggs. Inculcate. Teach, instill. In an effort to inculcate religious devotion, the officials ordered that the school day begin with the singing of a hymn. Incumbent. Obligatory, currently holding an office. It is incumbent upon all incumbent elected officials to keep accurate records of expenses incurred in office. Incur. Bring upon oneself. His parents refuse to pay any future debts he might incur. Incursion. Temporary invasion. The nightly incursions and hit-and-run raids of our neighbors across the border tried the patience of the country to the point where we decided to retaliate in force. Indefatigable. Tireless. Although the effort of taking out the garbage tired Wayne out for the entire morning, when it came to partying, he was indefatigable. Indelible. Not able to be erased. The indelible ink left a permanent mark on my shirt. Young Bill Clinton's meeting with President Kennedy made an indelible impression on the youth. Indentation. Notch, depressess. You can tell one tree from another by examining their leaves and noting the differences in the indentations along the edges of the leaves. Indenture. Bind as servant or apprentice to master. Many immigrants could come to America only after they had indentured themselves for several years. Indeterminate. Uncertain, not clearly fixed, indefinite. That interest rates shall rise appears certain, when they will do so, however, remains indeterminate. Indicative. Suggestive, implying. A lack of appetite may be indicative of a major mental or physical disorder. Indices. Signs, indications. Many college admissions officers believe that SAT scores and high school grades are the best indices of a student's potential to succeed in college. SG. Index. Indict. Charge. The district attorney didn't want to indict the suspect until she was sure she had a strong enough case to convince a jury. Indifferent. Unmoved or unconcerned by, mediocre. Because Anne felt no desire to marry, she was indifferent to Carl's constant proposals. Not only was she indifferent to him personally, but she felt that, Given his general silliness, he would make an indifferent husband. Indigenous native. Cigarettes are made of tobacco, a plant indigenous to the New World. Indigent. Poor, destitute. Someone who is truly indigent can't even afford to buy a pack of cigarettes. Indignation. Anger at an injustice. He felt indignation at the ill treatment of helpless animals. Indignity. Offensive or insulting treatment. Although he seemed to accept cheerfully the indignities heaped upon him, he was inwardly very angry. Indiscretion. Lack of tactfulness or sound judgment. Terrified that the least indiscretion could jeopardize his political career, the novice politician never uttered an unguarded word. Indiscriminate. Choosing at random, confused. She disapproved of her son's indiscriminate television viewing and decided to restrict him to educational programs. Indisputable. Too certain to be disputed. In the face of these indisputable statements, I withdraw my complaint. Indissoluble. Permanent. The indissoluble bonds of marriage are all too often being dissolved. Indoctrinate. Instruct in a doctrine or ideology. Cuban Americans resisted sending Elian Gonzalez back to Cuba because he would be indoctrinated there with communist principles. Indolent. Lazy. Couch potatoes lead an indolent life lying back on their lazy-boy recliners watching TV. Indomitable. Unconquerable, unyielding. Focusing on her game despite all her personal problems, tennis champion Steffi Graf proved she had an indomitable will to win. Indubitable. Unable to be doubted, unquestionable. Auditioning for the chorus line, Molly was an indubitable hit. The director fired the leading lady and hired Molly in her place. Induce. Persuade, bring about. After the quarrel, Tina said nothing could induce her to talk to Tony again. Indulgent. Humoring, yielding, lenient. Jay's mom was excessively indulgent. She bought him every Nintendo cartridge and video game on the market. She indulged Jay so much, she spoiled him rotten. Industrious. Diligent, hard-working. Look busy when the boss walks by your desk. It never hurts to appear industrious. Inebriated. Habitually intoxicated, drunk. Abe was inebriated more often than he was sober. Because of his inebriety, he was discharged from his job as a bus driver. Ineffable. Unutterable, cannot be expressed in speech. Such ineffable joy must be experienced, it cannot be described. Ineffectual. Not effective, weak. Because the candidate failed to get across his message to the public, his campaign was ineffectual. Inefficacious. Not effective, unable to produce a desired result. All Lois's coaxing and urging was inefficacious. Clark still refused to join her and Superman for dinner. Inept. Lacking skill, unsuited, incompetent. The inept glovemaker was all thumbs. Inequity. Unfairness. In demanding equal pay for equal work, Women protest the basic inequity of a system that gives greater financial rewards to men. Inert. Inactive, lacking power to move. "Get up, you lazy bones," she cried to her husband, who lay in bed inert. Inevitable. Unavoidable. Though death and taxes are both supposedly inevitable, some people avoid paying taxes for years. Inexorable. Relentless, unyielding, implacable. After listening to the pleas for clemency, the judge was inexorable and gave the convicted man the maximum punishment allowed by law. Infallible. Unerring. We must remember that none of us is infallible, we all make mistakes. Infamous. Notoriously bad. Charles Manson and Jeffrey Dahmer are both infamous killers. Infantile. Childish. When will he outgrow such infantile behavior? Infer. Deduce, conclude. From the students' glazed looks, it was easy for me to infer that they were bored out of their minds. Infernal. Pertaining to hell, devilish. Batman was baffled, he could think of no way to hinder the Joker's infernal scheme to destroy the city. Infidel. Unbeliever. The Saracens made war against the infidels. Infiltrate. Pass into or through, penetrate, an organization, sneakily. In order to be able to infiltrate enemy lines at night without being seen, the scouts darkened their faces and wore black coveralls. Infinitesimal. Very small. In the 20th century, physicists have made their greatest discoveries about the characteristics of infinitesimal objects like the atom and its parts. Infirmity. Weakness. Her greatest infirmity was lack of willpower. Inflated. Exaggerated, pompous, enlarged, with air or gas. His claims about the new product were inflated, it did not work as well as he had promised. Influx. Flowing into. The influx of refugees into the country has taxed the relief agencies severely. Informal. Absence of ceremony, casual. The English teacher preferred informal discussions to prepared lectures. Infraction. Violation, of a rule or regulation, breach. When Dennis Rodman butted heads with that referee, he committed a clear infraction of NBA rules. Infuriate. Enrage, anger. Her big brother's teasing always infuriated Margaret. No matter how hard she tried to keep her temper, he always got her goat. Infusion. Act of introducing or instilling a quality, liquid solution. The rookie quarterback brought an infusion of new life and vigor to the tired team. Ingenious. Clever, resourceful. Kid admired the ingenious way that her computer keyboard opened up to reveal the built-in CD-ROM below.